Elon Musk revealed the truth about you, and it's time to face it. Have you ever witnessed how a single powerful idea can instantly split a room? Some resist it fiercely, others defend it passionately, yet deep down everyone senses it cannot be ignored. That's exactly what happened. The reaction was so intense that even the loudest voices fell into complete silence. What emerged wasn't merely an opinion. It was a perspective carrying undeniable gravity. If you're here now, don't dismiss this lightly. This isn't just noise. This is a moment that compels people to reconsider everything they believe to be true. When that debate erupted, it wasn't just two opinions clashing. It was a collision of belief systems. The tension in the air was palpable, like the electric charge before a storm. The words spoken carried immense force. Not because they were shouted, but because they held unwavering conviction. Conviction cuts through the usual chatter, striking directly at the core of people's minds. That's why some statements feel explosive, not due to volume, but because of the undeniable truth they embody. People don't argue with such passion over trivial matters. They do so when a truth too significant to ignore threatens the foundations they've built around themselves. Think about it. Most of the time, new ideas are met with indifference. People shrug, laugh, or dismiss them. But when emotions flare, when words fly like sparks, that's a signal. It means something real has been touched. The argument isn't a sign of weakness in the idea. It's proof of its strength. Weak ideas fade quietly. Powerful ideas demand attention. They attract fire because everyone knows deep down they can't be easily dismissed. That's why the moment felt different. The words hit the room like a hammer. Every reaction, every outburst was evidence that the truth had landed. You could see it in their faces. Some leaned forward defensively, trying to protect their old beliefs. Others leaned back, uneasy, as if wanting to escape the weight of what had just been revealed. No one remained neutral. That's the nature of raw truth. It doesn't leave people untouched. It forces a response. Whether you accept it, resist it, or flee from it, you cannot deny its presence. That's why the argument was so intense. It wasn't people fighting each other. It was people fighting what the truth demanded of them. This is the beauty of conflict around ideas. The louder the clash, the greater the impact. Consider any breakthrough in history. The boldest discoveries, wildest inventions, most daring visions. All were met with resistance. People mocked, fought, and rejected them not because the ideas were empty, but because they had the power to reshape reality. That energy was palpable in that moment. It wasn't just two opinions battling. It was the weight of the future colliding with the comfort of the present. In those moments, you realize something crucial. When your words or ideas spark a storm, you're probably onto something. The storm isn't a sign to retreat. It's proof your idea is alive, strong enough to shake the walls around it. Weak ideas die quietly. Strong ideas create earthquakes. That's why the argument was so explosive, because everyone sensed the words had the potential to redefine how things are done. Imagine sitting there feeling the vibration as voices rose, expressions hardened, hands gestured with intensity. On the surface, it looked chaotic, but beneath transformation was unfolding in real time. Every person, whether they admitted it or not, was forced to confront themselves. They had to ask, what if this is true? What if this changes everything I thought I knew? That kind of argument leaves people shaken long after the noise fades. Most fear that feeling, the challenge that strips away excuses and forces accountability. But growth doesn't come from agreement. It comes from friction. Steel sharpens steel. Fire forges strength. If everything is always smooth, nothing changes. Explosions, clashes, heated debates. These moments reveal whether an idea has substance. The fact that the argument became explosive wasn't failure. It was proof of life. Proof that the message carried enough energy to awaken people, to jolt them from complacency. What made it powerful wasn't the argument itself, but the trigger, one statement, one revelation, one perspective so sharp it cut through the ordinary. That's what ignited the fire. That's what separates empty words from game-changing truths. Empty words pass through and vanish. True words lodge inside and stay whether welcomed or not. That's why you sensed resistance, denial, anger. The truth doesn't just land on the surface. It digs deep, unsettles, demands a response. That's why the argument became more than noise. It became a turning point. When you think about why it struck such a nerve, it becomes clear it wasn't just the words. It was the mirror those words held up. People aren't shaken by weak statements. They slide past, get dismissed, forgotten. But when something forces you to look at your own life, beliefs, and excuses, resistance begins. Resistance isn't proof the idea is wrong. It's proof it has weight. It's heavy enough to shift the ground beneath people, and human nature pushes back against anything threatening stability. Great shifts in history followed this pattern. At first, ideas seem impossible, even offensive to existing structures. They make people uncomfortable because they challenge identity, pride, and routines. That's the nerve being touched. People argue fiercely only when their reality feels threatened. That's why the most important revelations often come wrapped in conflict. Anger, noise, denial. They're defense mechanisms that rise only when something powerful has been spoken. It's the same on a personal level. When someone hears a truth about themselves they've avoided, it burns. They may laugh, argue, or dismiss it, but inside they know it struck a chord. The louder the denial, the deeper the cut. That's what you saw in that moment. It wasn't debate for debate's sake. It was a reaction to undeniable truth. The revelation was too sharp, too clear, too alive to ignore. It doesn't politely ask to be heard. It demands space. Exposing the walls people build around themselves. This is why powerful ideas are both dangerous and necessary. Dangerous because they strip illusions. Necessary because they open the door to growth. Transformation can't happen without shattering comfort zones. And comfort zones are defended fiercely. The nerve was struck because the words didn't just describe a possibility. They carried the weight of inevitability. People felt it wasn't speculation, but a glimpse of where things were headed, whether they liked it or not. That terrifies most people. They fought back not against the speaker but against the truth inside themselves whispering this might actually be real. That whisper is feared because once acknowledged it can't be unheard. You either act on it or choose to stay behind. That's why the room divided, not because the idea was unclear, but because it was too clear, too sharp to ignore. Some tried to rationalize, twist, or cover it up. You could see in their eyes the recognition that something inside them had been challenged. That's the nerve only powerful truths touch. When exposed, it reveals how deeply people cling to certainty even when it limits them. Interestingly, those who felt the sting most were often those who needed it most. The more someone fought back, the clearer it became they were defending not reality, but the story they'd built to protect themselves. That's what makes these moments profound. They don't just expose truth. They expose the gap between who people pretend to be and who they really are. That gap hurts when revealed, but it's also where transformation begins. Think about it. World changers aren't those who avoid discomfort. There are those who face it head-on. They hear something that shakes them to their core and instead of running, they lean in. They let the truth break them open and rebuild them stronger. That's what separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. The reason this revelation struck so hard is because it carried that potential, the power to dismantle illusions, expose excuses, and demand accountability. When words do that, they don't just spark arguments, they create shifts. You could feel that shift beginning in the room. People might not admit it, but deep inside they knew they'd witnessed something that would linger, replaying in their minds long after the noise faded. That's the true measure of power. When an idea echoes long after debate ends, that echo happens only when the nerve touched is deep, connected to the core of what people believe about themselves and the world. When the words landed, the room shifted. You could almost feel it in your bones. The atmosphere grew heavier, pressing down with an invisible force that left people struggling to find their voice. Moments before there was noise, interruptions, counterarguments flying like sparks in a storm. Then suddenly everything froze. Silence swept through. Not because everyone agreed, but because deep down they knew there was nothing left to throw back. When truth arrives in its raw form, it doesn't need applause or validation. It commands stillness. That stillness isn't weakness. It's the sound of minds catching up with what hearts already know. There's something remarkable about those rare moments when argument collapses into silence. People often mistake silence for defeat. But it's not that simple. Silence is the echo of impact. It's the mind scrambling to process what the heart has accepted. You could see it across the room. Eyes shifting, expressions tightening, hands fidgeting as if searching for a lifeline. Some clung to pride, but pride is fragile when truth has landed. You can delay, resist, but deep down you recognize when you've witnessed something that leaves no room for denial. It wasn't empty silence. It was full, charged, alive. The kind of silence that makes you realize words are no longer enough because the weight of what was spoken speaks louder than any reply. That's why people were speechless. Not because they had nothing to say, but because everything they wanted to say felt too small compared to the magnitude of what had been revealed. It's in that gap between thought and speech that transformation begins. Silence forces people inward, away from performance and towards self-reflection. What made the moment even more striking was its unexpectedness. People walk into conversations armed with opinions, confidence, and prepared answers. But truth doesn't care about preparation. It arrives unannounced, leaving people exposed. Exposure creates stillness because usual defenses, logic, sarcasm, clever remarks feel useless. You can't argue against something that resonates deeper than words. That's why the silence was more powerful than the noise before it. The noise was resistance. The silence was surrender, even if temporary. Here's the fascinating part. Silence like that doesn't just reveal who lost the argument. It reveals who's paying attention. Those who sit quietly, letting the weight sink in, are most likely to walk away changed. Silence isn't absence of words. It's presence of realization. You can't fake that moment when your mind races but your lips stay sealed. It's your body saying, "I need to process this before moving forward." That's why those still moments are so important. They aren't dead air. They're the birthplace of growth. Think about every time someone told you something so deep you couldn't respond immediately. You may have wanted to argue or laugh it off, but the words stayed. They echoed. That pause, that speechlessness signals you've been hit with something real. The same was happening here. The revelation wasn't just information. It was disruption. Disruption always creates silence before change. How people handled that silence spoke volumes. Some avoided eye contact, pretending unaffected. Others stared into space, lost in thought. A few looked relieved, as if a long-held burden was finally acknowledged. Every reaction was different, but the common thread was that no one escaped the moment's weight. That's the essence of being left speechless. It's not defeat. It's confrontation with a truth so sharp it carves space for reflection before any response. This is why those moments are rare and valuable. They remind us that true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, then forces the world to go quiet. They remind us transformation doesn't start with applause or quick replies. It starts with stunned silence, because in that silence seeds of change are planted. Arguments can be forgotten, but that silence lingers. It haunts, replaying in the mind until something shifts. It carries more weight than 1,000 speeches because it proves the message has taken root. Even if no one admits it aloud, the chaos that erupted contained something far greater than heated words. On the surface, it looked like conflict. Beneath, refinement was happening in real time. When ideas clash, emotions flare, and people defend their beliefs, it's not destruction, it's uncovering what truly matters. Fire doesn't just burn, it purifies. Pressure doesn't just crush, it forges. That's what unfolded in that moment. An argument that seemed messy was actually shaping something sharper, cleaner, and undeniable once formed. Every strong idea must walk through fire before becoming unshakable. Nothing valuable emerges without resistance, testing, stretching, questioning from every angle. If everyone agrees, applauds, and nods, the idea hasn't been tested. It's still soft, fragile, dependent on comfort. But when people fight it, raise voices, and challenge every detail, that's when the idea's true strength reveals itself. Weak foundations crumble, strong ones endure. That chaotic moment didn't break the message under resistance. It stood firm. It endured. That's why the silence afterward felt so heavy. The fire had done its work, leaving something undeniable. Think of how steel is made. Not by being left untouched, but hammered, heated, bent, and tested. The same applies to truth. If truth is real, no argument can destroy it. If genuine, no opposition can erase it. Conflict strips away the unnecessary, revealing the unbreakable core. That's why explosive moments should never be feared. They prove the message carries weight strong enough to survive the fire. Without that, it would fade into background noise, unnoticed, forgotten. Instead, the fire made it shine brighter. There's power in realizing chaos doesn't mean weakness. It means strength is being uncovered. The fact people reacted so strongly, compelled to argue and raise voices, shows the message wasn't hollow. Hollow words don't stir, inspire debate, trigger emotions, or stick. Words that touch something deep inside cause people to defend themselves fiercely. That defense isn't really against the speaker. It's against the part of themselves recognizing the truth. That's why conflict becomes a mirror. It reveals fears, denials, and secret knowledge people can't admit. The refinement inside that argument wasn't just about the idea. It was about the listeners. Each was forced to choose, hold on to comfort, or lean into growth. Growth never comes easy. It arrives as disruption and resistance. Those who see beyond the noise recognize every clash of perspective is an invitation to rise, shed old thinking, and make space for something stronger. That's what happened in that moment. The tension tested not just the strength of words, but the strength of those hearing them. You could feel the fire wasn't just outside, it was inside. People battled themselves. The loud arguments reflected the deeper war in their minds. Do I cling to what I've always known or let this new truth reshape me? Do I resist until the weight passes or accept it has already taken root? That's the beauty of facing truth.